obviously when AK constructed that roster, like he did when he brought in DeRozan, Lonzo, Levine, number one seed, All-Star break. Um, from then on, since the Lonzo stuff happened, Levine getting hurt, I can't tell if they're a sinking ship or being ready to like be revived.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure, part of it's not AK's fault, for everything, but I do think that he definitely deserves some kind of, no, nobody seems to be upset like how they would normally be. Like he hasn't done like to even be competitive. And we're just all sitting here accepting that it's all because Lonzo got hurt. And for me, you're kind of, I mean, he's giving him a fully guaranteed contract in the first place, which doesn't help your cap situation at all. But I mean, the way that they've just crumbled is it sucks, man.
Yeah, it sucks because there's no clear path on the way out. There's just not, especially when you sign Kobe White to a 3-year deal last year, which is totally justified, and he's played above what his contract is worth this year. I mean, he's been phenomenal. That's why he's second odds to win Most Improved Player. But you signed Nikola Vucevic to a contract extension last year. DeMar DeRozan's a pending free agent this year, and it appears that they'll probably re-sign him. And it's like this pattern and path of mediocrity, it just appears like it's indefinite. And there's no will and desire to blow it up and be great and do what is required and rebuild and just live in mediocrity and sell tickets and sell the United Center out and be the number one in the league in ticket sales every year and just continue to not win anything. Yeah. I mean, that's why it's super frustrating to be a Bulls fan, because you know that the current iteration of this team doesn't work. And if Zach LaVine's not going to be here next year. He's just not. It's not going to happen. I don't think he wants to be here, and I don't think they want him here, especially because I know they've kind of fallen off the past couple of weeks, but they were playing better basketball without him. And I don't know whose fault that is, because I still think Zach LaVine's a really talented player. I have his jersey in my closet, and I think in the right situation with the right team, like, he can be an absolute stud. But he hasn't played up to the max contract that he's given here in Chicago, and he hasn't been the number one guy on a team that you would expect him to be. So with Zach LaVine not being here, you're left with Lonzo Ball coming off an injury. Who knows what that's going to look like? You're left with Nikola Vucevic, who you just signed to a huge contract, who hasn't played up to it at all. You're left with probably DeMar DeRozan, who's aging, who I think is going to be 35 next year, and is still super efficient, but we know isn't a contributor to any team that's trying to win the finals. You have Kobe White, who's a budding superstar. You have Patrick Williams, who can't stay healthy. Alex Caruso is not going to be here next year, most likely. And then after that, like, you got a bunch of guys who are younger who have showed promise, but you don't know. Ayo Dosunmu has played well, but you don't know if he's an actual piece to a team that is going to, make a serious run in the future. So when you look at the team and you look at the players they have, you're just, where do we go? When are the Bulls going to be good again? When are they going to finally do what's required to be a good team? Look at what the Oklahoma City Thunder did when they lost their three best players. And it took a long time, but look at them now, top three in the West, still fighting for that number one seed. And guess what? They're set up for about 8 more years with the picks that they've accumulated from trading away assets. I mean, they are, with already one of the best players in the NBA, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, a rising superstar in Chet Holmgren, a bunch of good depth pieces, and first-round picks for the next 7-8 years. Like, this is what you have to do. And the unfortunate thing to recognize is, I almost don't know if this is on Arturas Karnisovas, because we know the guy who runs the organization, and Jerry Reinsdorf, is content with making his money. This is how he runs the White Sox. This is how he runs the Chicago Bulls. And guess what? The United Center is one of the biggest stadiums in the NBA. It's Chicago. People are going to go to the games as long as they don't completely suck. He knows that. They're first in ticket sales this year, and they're going to continue to be first in ticket sales as long as they're vying and fighting for that 9 and 10 seed, as long as they've got, competitive players. And they know that. And for that reason, they were unwilling to strip this team down to the studs at the trade deadline. They're going to be unwilling to do it this offseason because they are not willing to suffer through years of being bad and doing what's necessary to rebuild this team, because from a financial standpoint, it is not what is best for Jerry Reinsdorf and for the organization in his eyes. So it is a terrible time to be a Bulls fan. I mean, I could be wrong. They could swing a huge trade for Zach LaVine in the offseason and get some really good, impactful players that make them a top 5 team in the East. And maybe Billy Donovan gets fired and, they get another head coach who can elevate a team like Tom Thibodeau has for the New York Knicks, which I watched last night. But from what we know and what we see right now, I don't know when this team's going to be good. And I don't know how it happens. And it's sad. Like you're holding your hope on Lonzo Ball being great again. Like that's the last grace we have with this team is Lonzo comes back in 4 to 5 months. Guess what? He's good as ever. And they're back to being a top 3 seed in the East. That is the only thing we have left with the Bulls.
I think that Billy Donovan should take that Kentucky job. Yeah. I think it's overdue. It's, the whole dynamic with LaVine and him has just been strange. It just, you could sense there's like something there to where, I mean, I know you saw the Torrey Craig and Drummond situation. And I mean, if that's not a reflection of just, I mean, how the hell are you doing that? I mean, how, like, what are you doing? And, I thought that they benched Drummond way too long last year. I thought he should have been our starting center. The lineup of Drummond and Vooch playing on the floor, starting together, should have been fine. I mean, P. Will at the 4 is just not. It's not. And, again, he's a number 4 overall pick. And in a weak draft, like that draft wasn't necessarily the deepest or star-studded. It was a decent draft, but, I mean, you have to realize, like, don't just pick somebody at 4 because you have the 4. And they could have got, Scotty Barnes, or no, that's not the same draft.
They got Halliburton.
Halliburton. Yeah. And it's, you definitely fumbled the bag on that. But yeah, it's so frustrating, man. Cause are you a fan of the play-in?
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of the play-in.
Really?
I mean, the play-in's a genius idea. Are you kidding me? The play-in was the best thing the NBA has ever done. I mean, have you seen the Western Conference standings? There is a chance that in the play-in game, we get the Warriors playing Steph Curry and the Warriors at the end of their run, playing LeBron James and Lakers at the end of his career. We assume is ending soon. And a one game winner goes to the playoffs matchup. I mean, that's all you ask for in sports. I mean, that's what makes March Madness so great is the fact that it's one game. And I love the NBA playoffs. I think they're among the most exciting in all of sports. But when it's a series, the impact of each game is lessened. But boy, you will see ratings go through the roof to see Steph Curry in a single game against LeBron James to make the playoffs. And the other playing game is Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, and Devin Booker and the Phoenix Suns against the Sacramento Kings and DeMontis Sabonis. Like another great game. Yep. So, and from what we saw last year with the Heat coming out of the play-in and immediately knocking off the number 1 seed Celtics and getting to the second round, like there's validity to the idea that the play-in works when it comes to teams being able to make it out of the play-in and still make it to the finals. So I think it's the best decision that's been made. And it keeps fan bases interested for the entire year. I mean, if the play-in didn't exist, the Bulls would have been eliminated in February. Like they'd be done in February. But yet here we are, April 10th, invested, however you want to be, in Bulls games because whether you like it or not, they will have a chance to compete for the playoffs.
I'm not a fan of it. No, I'm not, dude. It's like it seems like I mean, when they originally did it, it was to avoid tanking, right? That was the whole idea behind it. Was to give those teams, like we're saying, the 10th spot to not start tanking during the year. And for that reason, I don't think like it's like you're saying, yeah, it's great when a team's in the play-in and they could come out and actually go all the way. That's awesome. But I don't like, I think, I'm a tradition guy, the top 8 with the series. And it's the issue is when you start messing with the game like this, it changes all the records. And it starts messing with kind of too much of the history of it. Obviously, you need to evolve and adapt to modern day stuff. But I mean, we see records like there's going to be new records. There's going to be old records that should stand, but will no longer stand because of the way stuff is played now. That's where it starts. That's where it starts getting, and it's not fair to those guys who went through it the way that it was. But that's just how I see it. Over under.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I mean, I was just like, I get it because it does get muddy when you talk about the records and things like that. But I think for the entertainment of the NBA and in the eyes of Adam Silver, it's a no-brainer, right? Because again, these single games that you get are phenomenal,
Yeah.
and just the like tanking was already preventable by the NBA when they introduced the lottery, right? Like that's always been step one. It's like, yeah, the Spurs and whoever has, well, Pistons, the worst record in the NBA, like, who knows if they're really tanking, and they'll have the best odds to get the first overall pick, but they're not a lock to get the first overall pick. But just adding the play in, it just introduces competitiveness in a league where there's typically such disparity between the best teams and the worst teams. Like in the NFL or in the MLB, it's typically a ton of parity. Like any team can win any given week. Any team can be in contention. Like that's just the way those two leagues work. But in the NBA, when it came to the years of the big threes, and it probably changed when the Heat, assembled Chris Bosh, Dwayne Wade, and LeBron James together, was like there was such for a period of time, especially when the Cavs and Warriors were going back and forth for 5 straight years when they met in the finals. There was such a drop off between the top and the bottom that they had to find a way to make it more interesting, competitive, and those teams that were in the middle find a way for those teams to have interest in the season. And it's almost funny you're saying this because the play-in probably was a bad thing for the Chicago Bulls because them being able, yes, it's bad. It's bad for our organization, but it's great for the viewing product of the NBA. So, it's funny because the play-in kept the Bulls
every year,
around
every
year. And Jerry Reinsdorf and Arturas Karnisovas, can say to the fan base, well, hey, I mean, we won a play-in game last year. We're right there. We're right there. Like, no, you're not. You made it seem like you are, but you're not. So
what about the in-season tournament?
In-season tournament, I was also a fan of that. I was skeptical going into it, but seeing how it played out, there was a ton of energy in those games. I mean, it felt like a playoff game in the middle of the season. And to see in the first year of it, a team that's now the 6th seed in the East win it, or sorry, 6th seed in the East met the 9th seed in the West, because the Lakers won the end-season tournament. To see the 9th seed in the West win that, like, it just proves that it's a good, and people are going to say, oh, the Celtics didn't try, the Bucks didn't try, the Timberwolves didn't try, the Nuggets didn't try. I don't believe that to be true, but to give teams another opportunity to be competitive and make games more meaningful in the middle of the season is a great idea.